When Emperor Haile Selassie I, the Lion of Judah, the man hailed as divine by millions, was overthrown in 1974, his story became legend. But behind the crown stood a family, 7 children who lived through the empire's rise, exile, and fall. Some were soldiers, some nurses, some prisoners, and some never lived to see peace. From a princess who died in an Italian cell to a prince who perished in a car crash, the dynasty's next generation carried both the splendor and the sorrow of modern Ethiopia. This is the complete chronicle of Haile Selassie's children, their births, their lives, their loves, their fates, and how the imperial bloodline endures long after the throne itself was lost. Today, we trace 7 lives across a century of triumph and tragedy, answering the question, whatever happened to Haile Selassie's children? To understand the children, we must first understand their world. Haile Selassie, born Tafari Makonnen in 1892, ascended to become Emperor of Ethiopia in 1930. His reign would span 4 decades of unprecedented change, modernization, war, exile, restoration, and revolution. In 1911, he married Waziri Menon Asfaw, who became Empress Menon upon his coronation. Together, they would have 7 children between 1912 and 1931, each born into an empire struggling to balance ancient traditions with modern pressures. The imperial household operated within the complex hierarchy of Ethiopian nobility. Children received titles at birth, princes and princesses, with defined roles in the royal succession. Education was paramount, often conducted by foreign tutors to prepare them for leadership in a changing world. The family's story unfolds against the backdrop of Italian invasion in 1935, 5 years of exile in Britain, restoration in 1941, and the gradual political upheaval that would culminate in the 1974 revolution. Through it all, the children of Haile Selassie would experience the full spectrum of royal privilege and imperial burden. Each child's fate would be shaped by forces beyond their control: war, politics, tradition, and time itself. Some would die young. Others would live to see the end of monarchy in Ethiopia. All would carry the weight of imperial legacy. Their stories are not merely footnotes to their father's reign, but complete lives lived within the crucible of Ethiopian history. From eldest to youngest, we now examine each of these 7 lives in turn. Born sometime around 1909 to 1912, Princess Romanework Haile Selassie entered the world during her father's rise to power as Ras Tafari. The exact date of her birth remains uncertain in historical records, reflecting the informal documentation practices of early 20th century Ethiopia. As the eldest daughter of the future emperor, Romanework was positioned from birth to play a crucial role in dynastic politics. Her early years coincided with her father's regency under Empress Zewditu, a period of gradual modernization and increasing international engagement. The princess received education befitting her status, including instruction in multiple languages and European customs, preparation for the diplomatic marriages that were expected of Ethiopian royal women. In keeping with Ethiopian royal tradition, Princess Romanework's marriage was arranged to strengthen political alliances. She wed Dejazmak Beyene Merid, a member of the Ethiopian nobility who served in various administrative capacities under Haile Selassie's government. Beyene Merid was not merely a ceremonial figure, but an active participant in the emperor's modernization efforts. Their union represented the consolidation of loyal noble families under the imperial banner, a strategy Haile Selassie employed throughout his reign to maintain stability. The couple established themselves within the court hierarchy, with Romanework taking on the ceremonial duties expected of an imperial daughter. Their marriage produced children, ensuring the continuation of both their bloodlines within the expanding royal family network. When Benito Mussolini's forces invaded Ethiopia in October 1935, Princess Romanework faced the same impossible choice as all imperial family members: flee into exile or remain to face occupation. Unlike many of her relatives who accompanied Haile Selassie to Britain, Romanework and her husband chose to stay in Ethiopia. This decision proved fateful. Initially, some members of the Ethiopian nobility attempted to navigate the occupation by maintaining low profiles or even collaborating with Italian authorities. However, The fascist government's racial policies and imperial ambitions left little room for accommodation with the former ruling class. Romanework's presence in occupied Ethiopia made her both a symbol of resistance and a target for Italian suppression. Her royal status represented the legitimacy that Mussolini sought to eliminate in his effort to transform Ethiopia into an Italian colony. By 1937, Italian authorities had identified Princess Romanework as a security threat. Along with other members of the Ethiopian nobility who had remained in the country, she was arrested and transported to Italy for imprisonment. The fascist government's policy was to remove potential focal points for Ethiopian resistance by exiling prominent figures to Italian soil. Romanework was confined in Turin, where conditions for Ethiopian political prisoners were harsh. The Italian authorities made little distinction between combatants and civilians, treating royal family members as enemy nationals rather than protected persons under international law. In 1940, after 3 years of imprisonment, Princess Romanework died in Turin. The exact circumstances of her death remain unclear, whether from illness, malnutrition, or deliberate mistreatment. What is certain is that she became the first of Haile Selassie's children to die, and her death occurred while her father was still fighting for Ethiopia's liberation from British exile. Princess Romanework's death in Italian captivity made her a martyr figure in Ethiopian imperial historiography. Her sacrifice was contrasted with those family members who had chosen the safety of exile, though such comparisons oversimplify the impossible choices faced by all Ethiopians during the occupation. Her children survived the war and occupation, eventually reuniting with the restored imperial court after 1941. Through them, Romanework's bloodline continued within the complex network of Ethiopian royal descendants. Her husband, Dejazmak Beyene Mered, also survived and resumed his position within the imperial administration. The princess's fate foreshadowed the tragedies that would befall other imperial family members throughout the turbulent mid-20th century. Her story embodies the personal cost of political resistance and the vulnerability of even the most privileged during times of war and occupation. Romanework's legacy remains primarily symbolic rather than political. She had no opportunity to influence Ethiopian governance or policy. Instead, she represents the imperial family's capacity for sacrifice and the human tragedy that accompanied Ethiopia's struggle for independence. Her death in Turin stands as a reminder that royal birth provided no immunity from the brutal realities of 20th century warfare and occupation. Born in 1912, Princess Tenagnework Haile Selassie entered the world during the final years of her father's regency. Her birth coincided with a period of significant modernization in Ethiopia as Rastafari implemented reforms in education, infrastructure, and government administration. As the second daughter of the future emperor, Tenagnework received an education designed to prepare her for the complex demands of royal life. Her early education included traditional Ethiopian religious instruction alongside modern subjects taught by foreign tutors. The princess learned multiple languages, including English and French, skills that would prove invaluable during the family's later exile. Her upbringing reflected her father's vision of a modernized Ethiopia that could engage with the international community while maintaining its cultural identity. Tenagnework's childhood was spent within the imperial court's protected environment, but she was not isolated from the broader changes occurring in Ethiopian society. Her education included exposure to European customs and diplomatic protocols, preparing her for the international marriages that were often expected of royal daughters. In 1930, Princess Tenagnework married Ras Damto, one of Emperor Haile Selassie's most trusted military commanders and political allies. Damto had distinguished himself as a capable administrator and military leader, making him an ideal match for an imperial daughter in both political and personal terms. The marriage strengthened Haile Selassie's position by binding Damto more closely to the imperial family. Damto received significant military responsibilities and was appointed as governor of various provinces. The couple had children, establishing another branch of the imperial family tree. When Italy invaded Ethiopia in 1935, Ras Damto played a crucial role in organizing Ethiopian resistance. He commanded forces in southern Ethiopia, attempting to coordinate with other regional commanders to repel the Italian advance. However, the technological superiority of Italian forces, including aircraft and chemical weapons, proved overwhelming. In February 1937, Ras Desta Damtu was captured by Italian forces and executed, making Princess Tenagnework a widow at the age of 25. His death deprived Ethiopia of one of its most capable military leaders and left Tenagnework to care for their young children during a period of national crisis. Following the Italian occupation of Addis Ababa in May 1936, Princess Tenagnework joined the imperial family's exodus to Britain. The royal family was granted asylum by the British government, though their presence in London was complicated by Britain's initial recognition of Italian authority over Ethiopia. During the 5-year exile, Tenagnework faced the challenge of maintaining her children's Ethiopian identity while adapting to life in a foreign country. The imperial family lived modestly by royal standards, dependent on British government allowances and international sympathy for their cause. Tenagnework used her time in exile to advocate for Ethiopian independence, participating in meetings with British officials and international organizations. Her status as a war widow gave her particular credibility in discussions about Italian atrocities and the need for Ethiopian restoration. The princess also focused on her children's education during the exile years, ensuring they received proper schooling while maintaining connections to Ethiopian culture and language. This balance between adaptation and cultural preservation would characterize much of her later life. When British and Ethiopian forces liberated Addis Ababa in April 1941, Princess Tenagnework returned with her father to a country devastated by war and occupation. The challenges of reconstruction were immense, requiring the imperial family to rebuild not only government institutions, but also their own social and economic foundations. In the post-war period, Tenagnework remarried, though details of her second marriage are less well documented than her first. Her focus during the 1940s and 1950s was primarily on family responsibilities and supporting the imperial court's ceremonial functions. The princess took on various charitable and social responsibilities, particularly those related to women's welfare and children's education. Her work reflected the imperial family's efforts to modernize Ethiopian society while maintaining traditional values and hierarchies. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Tenagnework remained a visible presence at court ceremonies and official functions. Her survival of personal tragedy and national crisis made her a respected figure within Ethiopian high society. The 1974 revolution that overthrew Emperor Haile Selassie created immediate dangers for all imperial family members. Princess Tenagnework, now in her early 60s, faced the reality that her royal status had transformed from privilege to liability under the new Marxist government. Unlike some family members who were imprisoned or executed, Tenagnework managed to survive the initial purges of the imperial family. However, her life under the Derg was severely constrained, with constant surveillance and restrictions on movement and activities. The princess lived through the entire period of military rule in Ethiopia, witnessing the gradual destruction of imperial institutions and the persecution of those associated with the former regime. Her survival required careful navigation of political dangers while maintaining dignity in reduced circumstances. Princess Tenagnework died in 2003, having lived for 91 years and witnessed the complete transformation of Ethiopian society. Her longevity made her one of the last direct links to the imperial era and its traditions. Her descendants continue to maintain connections to Ethiopian royal heritage, though without political significance in modern Ethiopia. Through her children and grandchildren, Tenagnework's bloodline remains part of the broader network of imperial descendants scattered throughout the Ethiopian diaspora. Her legacy rests primarily on her survival and continuity rather than on specific achievements or reforms. She embodied the imperial family's capacity to endure through historical upheaval while maintaining dignity and cultural identity across multiple generations. Born on July 27, 1916, Prince Asfaw Wossen Haile Selassie entered the world as the heir apparent to the Ethiopian throne. His birth occurred during his father's regency under Empress Zewditu, positioning him from infancy as a central figure in Ethiopia's future. Upon his father's coronation as Emperor Haile Selassie I in 1930, the 14-year-old prince received the title of Crown Prince, formally establishing his place in the line of succession. The designation of Crown Prince carried enormous weight in Ethiopian political culture. Unlike European monarchies where primogeniture was automatic, Ethiopian succession had historically involved competition between royal claimants. Haile Selassie's clear designation of Asfaw Wossen as heir apparent represented an attempt to modernize and stabilize imperial succession practices. From childhood, Asfaw Wossen was groomed for future leadership. His education combined traditional Ethiopian instruction with modern subjects taught by foreign tutors. The prince learned multiple languages and was exposed to international diplomatic practices, preparing him for rule in an increasingly connected world. Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen's education reflected his father's vision of a modernized Ethiopia. He studied at prestigious institutions, including Liverpool University in England, where he gained exposure to Western educational methods and political systems. This international education was designed to prepare him for the challenges of governing a developing nation in the mid-20th century. Upon returning to Ethiopia, the Crown Prince was gradually integrated into government administration. He received training in military affairs, provincial administration, and diplomatic protocols. His father ensured that he gained practical experience in various aspects of governance while maintaining the ceremonial dignity appropriate to his status. The prince's preparation for rule included extensive travel, both within Ethiopia and internationally. These experiences were intended to broaden his understanding of global affairs and strengthen Ethiopia's diplomatic relationships. His presence at international events also served to demonstrate the continuity and stability of the Ethiopian monarchy. During the 1930s, as tensions with Italy escalated, Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen was increasingly involved in military and strategic planning. His education had prepared him for such challenges, though the reality of defending Ethiopian independence would prove more complex than any academic preparation could anticipate. On December 13, 1960, while Emperor Haile Selassie was visiting Brazil, a group of military officers and intellectuals launched a coup attempt in Addis Ababa. The conspirators, led by Germain Niue and his brother Mengistu Niue, sought to establish a more progressive government and proclaimed Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen as the new emperor. The coup plotters claimed that Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen had agreed to serve as a constitutional monarch in a reformed government. However, the prince's actual level of involvement remained controversial. Some sources suggest he was coerced into participation, while others indicate he may have had genuine sympathy for reform movements. The coup attempt failed within 4 days when loyal forces, supported by the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, restored imperial authority. Emperor Haile Selassie returned to Ethiopia and reasserted control, but the incident created lasting tension between father and son. The emperor questioned his heir's loyalty and judgment, while the crown prince found his future prospects diminished. Following the failed coup, Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen's role in government was significantly reduced. Emperor Haile Selassie became increasingly reluctant to delegate authority to his son, preferring to maintain direct control over key decisions. This tension would persist for the remainder of the emperor's reign. When the Derg overthrew Emperor Haile Selassie in September 1974, Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen was receiving medical treatment in Switzerland. This fortuitous absence probably saved his life, as many imperial family members who remained in Ethiopia were imprisoned or executed by the new military government. From exile, the Crown Prince watched helplessly as the Derg systematically dismantled the imperial system and persecuted the royal family. Reports of his father's death in custody in August 1975 left him as the senior surviving member of the imperial family, though without any realistic prospect of restoration. Life in exile proved challenging for someone who had been prepared from birth to rule Ethiopia. The Crown Prince faced financial difficulties and the psychological burden of seeing his inheritance destroyed by revolution. He maintained connections with other Ethiopian exiles, but found little international support for restoration efforts. During the 1980s, as Ethiopia experienced civil war and famine under the Derg, Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen continued to advocate for change from abroad. However, his advanced age and limited resources restricted his ability to influence events within Ethiopia significantly. In 1989, following the overthrow of the Derg and the apparent end of the Marxist government in Ethiopia, Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen proclaimed himself Emperor Haile Selassie I. This declaration was largely symbolic, as he lacked any practical authority or significant support within Ethiopia itself. The self-proclamation reflected the prince's belief that he remained the legitimate heir to the Ethiopian throne despite the political transformations that had occurred since 1974. However, the new Ethiopian government under Meles Zenawi showed no interest in monarchical restoration, instead establishing a federal republic. Emperor Haile Selassie I remained in exile primarily in the United States, where he attempted to maintain royal traditions and support Ethiopian cultural organizations. His court in exile included other imperial family members and loyal supporters, though it operated without any real political influence. Emperor Haile Selassie I died in Virginia on February 17, 1997, having never returned to rule in Ethiopia. His death marked the end of the direct line of succession from Emperor Haile Selassie, though other family members continued to maintain royal traditions. In 2000, the Ethiopian government allowed the repatriation of Haile Selassie's remains to Addis Ababa, where he was buried alongside other imperial family members at Holy Trinity Cathedral. This gesture represented a partial reconciliation between the Ethiopian government and the imperial legacy. Emperor Haile Selassie's children continue to maintain ceremonial royal titles and connections to Ethiopian cultural heritage. His son, Prince Zera Jacob Haile Selassie, is recognized by some supporters as the current heir to the Ethiopian imperial throne, though this claim has no legal or political significance in modern Ethiopia. The imperial descendants remain active in Ethiopian diaspora communities, particularly in the United States and Europe, where they support cultural and charitable organizations. Through them, the bloodline of Haile Selassie continues, though without the political power their ancestors once wielded. Born in 1917, Princess Zenebework Haile Selassie entered a world where royal marriages served as crucial instruments of political alliance. As the third child and third daughter of the future emperor, she was destined from birth to play a role in the complex web of Ethiopian noble relationships that her father was constructing to consolidate his power. In 1932, at approximately 15 years of age, Princess Zenebework was married to Haile Selassie Gugsa, a member of the powerful Gugsa family from northern Ethiopia. This marriage was not merely a personal union, but a calculated political strategy designed to neutralize potential opposition to Emperor Haile Selassie's centralizing policies. The Gugsa family had historically controlled significant territories in northern Ethiopia and maintained semi-autonomous authority that sometimes challenged imperial centralization efforts. By marrying his daughter to Haile Selassie Gugsa, the emperor sought to transform a potential rival into a loyal family member bound by marriage ties. The marriage between Princess Zenebework and Haile Selassie Gugsa represented the emperor's broader strategy of co-opting regional nobility through kinship connections. Rather than relying solely on military force or administrative pressure, Haile Selassie frequently used marriage alliances to secure loyalty from powerful provincial families. Haile Selassie Gugsa held the title of Ras and controlled substantial territory in northern Ethiopia. His marriage to the emperor's daughter was intended to ensure his continued loyalty and prevent any potential alliance with foreign powers or domestic opponents. The union was celebrated as a symbol of national unity and imperial strength. The political significance of the marriage extended beyond the immediate families involved. Other regional leaders observed the alliance as evidence of the emperor's ability to secure loyalty through generous treatment of those who cooperated with his centralization efforts. The marriage served as both reward and warning to other provincial rulers. For Princess Zenebework, the marriage meant leaving the imperial court in Addis Ababa for life in northern Ethiopia, where her husband's family maintained their traditional stronghold. This transition required adaptation to different customs and political dynamics while maintaining her status as an imperial daughter. Tragedy struck the young couple when Princess Zenebework died in 1934 at approximately 16 or 17 years of age. The exact circumstances of her death are not well documented in historical records, reflecting both the limited medical knowledge of the time and the private nature of royal family health matters. Her death occurred during the early years of her marriage, before she had the opportunity to establish herself fully in her new role or to bear children who might have strengthened the political alliance between the imperial and Gugsa families. The loss represented both personal tragedy and political disappointment for Emperor Haile Selassie's alliance strategy. The princess's youth at the time of death highlighted the vulnerability of royal women in an era when child marriage was common and medical care was limited. Her fate reflected the broader challenges faced by women of all social classes in early 20th century Ethiopia, where maternal mortality and disease claimed many young lives. Princess Zenebework's death left her husband, Haile Selassie I, without the family connection that had been intended to secure his loyalty to the imperial regime. This severing of the kinship bond would have significant political consequences in the near future. The death of Princess Zenebework removed the personal and family ties that had bound Haile Selassie I to the imperial court. Without his wife's presence as a constant reminder of his connection to the emperor, Gugsa's loyalty became increasingly questionable as political pressures mounted on Ethiopia. When Italy began its invasion of Ethiopia in 1935, Haile Selassie Gugsa made the fateful decision to defect to the Italian side. His betrayal was among the most significant defecatons during the early stages of the war, as it gave the Italians access to crucial intelligence about Ethiopian defensive preparations and provided them with a legitimate Ethiopian figure to use in their propaganda efforts. Gugsa's defection was motivated by a combination of personal grievances against the emperor's centralizing policies and calculations about Italy's likely victory in the conflict. However, his decision was also made easier by the absence of family obligations that might have kept him loyal to Haile Selassie's cause. The betrayal validated Emperor Haile Selassie's strategy of using marriage alliances to secure loyalty, even as it demonstrated the limitations of such approaches when not reinforced by ongoing personal relationships. Princess Zenebework's death had inadvertently removed a crucial constraint on her husband's political choices. Princess Zenebework's brief life and early death came to symbolize the fragility of imperial political strategies and the human cost of dynastic marriages. Her story illustrated how quickly political alliances could unravel when based primarily on family connections rather than shared interests or values. The princess's fate also reflected the broader vulnerabilities of the Ethiopian imperial system in the face of external threats and internal divisions. Her marriage had been intended to strengthen the empire's unity, but her death contributed indirectly to one of the most damaging defections during the Italian invasion. In imperial family memory, Princess Zenebework was remembered as a victim of both political necessity and personal tragedy. Her story served as a reminder that royal birth provided no protection against the fundamental uncertainties of life and politics in early 20th century Ethiopia. Her legacy remained primarily symbolic rather than institutional, as she had no opportunity to influence policy or establish lasting institutions. Instead, she represented the imperial family's willingness to sacrifice personal happiness for political necessity, and the tragic consequences when such sacrifices failed to achieve their intended goals. Born in 1919, Princess Tsehai Haile Selassie spent her earliest years in the Ethiopian imperial court during a period of relative stability and modernization. As the fourth daughter of Emperor Haile Selassie, she grew up within the protected environment of the palace, receiving education designed to prepare her for the responsibilities of royal life. However, Princess Tsehai's formative years were dramatically altered by the Italian invasion of Ethiopia in 1935. At the age of 16, she accompanied her family into exile in Britain, leaving behind the only world she had known for an uncertain future in a foreign country. This experience of displacement would profoundly shape her character and future aspirations. The transition from imperial palace to exile in London required significant adaptation. The princess, along with her siblings, had to adjust to reduced circumstances while maintaining the dignity expected of the Ethiopian royal family. The British government provided asylum and financial support, but the family's lifestyle was modest compared to their previous imperial status. During exile, Princess Tsehai demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability. Rather than retreating into bitterness about their circumstances, she embraced the opportunity to engage with British society and culture. Her positive attitude and willingness to learn made her popular among both Ethiopian exiles and British supporters of the Ethiopian cause. One of the most significant aspects of Princess Tsehai's exile was her decision to pursue professional training as a children's nurse. This choice was unusual for an imperial daughter, as royal women were traditionally expected to focus on ceremonial duties rather than professional careers. However, the circumstances of exile created opportunities for personal development that would have been impossible within the constraints of imperial court life. Tsehai's nursing training reflected her genuine compassion for children and her desire to contribute meaningfully to society rather than merely maintaining royal status. She studied at respected British institutions, learning modern medical techniques and childcare practices that were not yet widely available in Ethiopia. The princess's dedication to her nursing studies impressed her instructors and fellow students. She approached her training with seriousness and determination, demonstrating that her commitment to helping children was genuine rather than merely a way to occupy her time during exile. Her nursing education also provided Princess Tsehai with practical skills and professional confidence that would serve her well upon returning to Ethiopia. She envisioned using her training to improve child health care in her homeland, contributing to the modernization efforts that her father had championed before the Italian invasion. In 1940, while still in British exile, Princess Tsehai married Lige Abiye Abebe, a member of the Ethiopian nobility who had also accompanied the imperial family to Britain. Their wedding was a modest affair compared to traditional Ethiopian royal ceremonies, but it represented hope for the future and continuity of imperial family traditions despite their displaced circumstances. Abiye Abebe was well educated and shared Princess Tsehai's commitment to modernizing Ethiopia upon their eventual return. The couple's marriage was based on mutual affection and shared values rather than purely political considerations, though it also served to strengthen bonds within the exile community. The marriage provided Princess Tsehai with personal happiness and stability during the uncertain years of exile. The couple planned to return to Ethiopia together once the country was liberated from Italian occupation, with Tsehai intending to use her nursing skills to establish modern child health care facilities. Their partnership represented a new model of royal marriage, based on shared professional interests and social reform goals rather than traditional court protocols. This approach reflected the broader changes in Ethiopian society that were occurring as a result of the exile experience and exposure to international ideas. In 1942, shortly after the imperial family's return to liberated Ethiopia, Princess Tsehai became pregnant with her first child. The pregnancy was welcomed by the entire imperial family as a symbol of renewal and hope for the future. However, the joy of anticipation turned to tragedy when complications arose during childbirth. Princess Tsehai died in August 1942 at the age of 23, along with her infant child. The deaths occurred despite the best medical care available in Ethiopia at the time, highlighting the continued limitations of healthcare infrastructure even in the capital city of Addis Ababa. The princess's death sent shockwaves through Ethiopian society. She had become a beloved figure during the liberation period, known for her compassion, dedication to nursing, and plans to improve child health care in Ethiopia. Her death was seen as a profound loss not only for the imperial family but for the entire nation. Emperor Haile Selassie was devastated by his daughter's death. Princess Tsehai had represented his hopes for a modernized, compassionate Ethiopia, and her loss symbolized the fragility of those aspirations. The emperor ordered official mourning throughout the country and immediately began planning memorials to honor her memory. The most lasting tribute to Princess Tsehai's memory was the establishment of Princess Tsehai Memorial Hospital in Addis Ababa, which opened in 1951. The hospital was specifically designed to provide modern medical care for women and children, fulfilling the princess's vision of improving health care for Ethiopia's most vulnerable populations. The Memorial Hospital became one of Ethiopia's premier medical institutions, offering services that had previously been unavailable in the country. It featured modern equipment, well-trained staff, and treatment protocols based on international best practices. The facility served as both a practical memorial to Princess Tsehai and a symbol of Ethiopia's commitment to modernization. Beyond the hospital, Princess Tsehai's memory was preserved through various other institutions and programs focused on child welfare and women's health. Her story became part of Ethiopian national mythology, representing the ideals of service, compassion, and sacrifice for the common good. The princess's legacy transcended her brief life, inspiring subsequent generations of Ethiopian women to pursue education and professional careers in service to their communities. Her example helped establish nursing and healthcare as respected professions for women in Ethiopian society, contributing to broader social changes in gender roles and expectations. Born on October 16, 1924, Prince Makonnen Haile Selassie entered the world during a period of significant modernization in Ethiopia. As the second son of Emperor Haile Selassie, he was positioned from birth to play an important role in the imperial family's future, though he stood behind his older brother, Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen, in the line of succession. Prince Makonnen's birth occurred 8 years after his brother's, giving him a somewhat different childhood experience within the imperial household. By the time of his birth, Emperor Haile Selassie had already begun implementing significant educational reforms, and Prince Makonnen benefited from more advanced tutoring and international exposure than his older siblings had received. His early education combined traditional Ethiopian instruction with modern subjects taught by foreign tutors. The prince demonstrated particular aptitude for languages and international affairs, skills that would serve him well in his future diplomatic and administrative roles. His education was designed to prepare him for high-level government service rather than direct succession to the throne. When the Italian invasion forced the imperial family into exile in 1936, 12-year-old Prince Makonnen accompanied his family to Britain. The 5 years of exile provided him with intensive exposure to European culture and education, including formal schooling at prestigious British institutions that broadened his worldview significantly. Upon returning to Ethiopia in 1941, Prince Makonnen was gradually integrated into government administration and ceremonial duties. Emperor Haile Selassie assigned him various responsibilities that allowed him to gain practical experience in governance while representing the imperial family at important functions. The prince's role expanded significantly in 1947 when he was appointed Governor-General of Wollo Province, one of Ethiopia's most important administrative regions. This appointment provided him with executive authority and the opportunity to implement policies directly, rather than merely serving in ceremonial capacities. In 1959, Prince Makonnen received the title Duke of Harar, reflecting his elevated status within the imperial hierarchy and his specific responsibilities for the historic city of Harar and its surrounding region. Harar was significant both culturally and economically, making this appointment a mark of considerable trust from his father. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, Prince Makonnen served as an important diplomatic representative for Ethiopia. He traveled extensively on behalf of the emperor, attending international conferences, meeting with foreign dignitaries, and promoting Ethiopian interests abroad. His education and cultural sophistication made him an effective ambassador for the modernizing Ethiopian monarchy. The prince also played crucial roles in domestic policy implementation, particularly in areas related to education and infrastructure development. His work reflected Emperor Haile Selassie's broader modernization agenda and helped establish the practical foundations for many reform initiatives. In 1957, Prince Makonnen married Sarah Gizal, a member of the Ethiopian nobility who shared his commitment to modernization and social reform. Their marriage was celebrated as a union that combined personal affection with appropriate social status, representing a model for modern Ethiopian aristocratic relationships. Sarah Gizal brought her own distinguished background to the marriage, and she quickly established herself as an active partner in Prince Makonnen's public duties. The couple worked together on various charitable and educational initiatives, particularly those focused on improving opportunities for Ethiopian women and children. The marriage produced 5 sons, ensuring the continuation of Prince Makonnen's branch of the imperial family. Their children were raised with the expectation that they would contribute to Ethiopian society through public service, education, or other professional achievements, rather than merely enjoying aristocratic privilege. The prince's family life was characterized by a balance between royal protocol and modern child-rearing practices. He ensured that his sons received excellent education while also maintaining connections to Ethiopian cultural traditions and values. This approach reflected his belief in progress through evolution rather than revolutionary change. Prince Makonnen's role as a father was particularly important given his position as a potential alternative to Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen should circumstances require a change in succession plans. His sons represented the future of the imperial family and the continuation of Haile Selassie's lineage. Among Emperor Haile Selassie's children, Prince Makonnen was widely regarded as his father's favorite son. This preference was based on the prince's demonstrated competence in administrative and diplomatic roles, his loyalty to imperial policies, and his apparent lack of political ambition that might threaten his father's authority. Unlike Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen, who had been implicated in the 1960 coup attempt, Prince Makonnen maintained an impeccable record of loyalty and service. His dedication to implementing his father's policies without seeking independent political power made him particularly valuable to the emperor during the increasingly turbulent 1960s. The prince's effectiveness in various government roles reinforced his father's confidence in his abilities and judgment. He successfully managed complex administrative challenges while maintaining diplomatic relationships with international partners, demonstrating the competence that Emperor Haile Selassie valued highly. Prince Makonnen's reputation for reliability and competence led to speculation that he might eventually be designated as heir apparent instead of his older brother. However, such discussions remained unofficial, and the prince himself never publicly expressed interest in altering the established succession order. On May 13, 1957, tragedy struck when Prince Makonnen was killed in an automobile accident near Nazareth, approximately 100 kilometers southeast of Addis Ababa. He was returning from an official engagement when his vehicle crashed, resulting in his immediate death at the age of 32. The accident also claimed the lives of several other passengers and officials who were traveling with the prince. The news of Prince Makonnen's death devastated Emperor Haile Selassie and the entire imperial family. The loss was particularly difficult because the prince had been in the prime of his life and career, with enormous potential for future contributions to Ethiopian development and modernization. The circumstances of the accident were investigated thoroughly, but no evidence of sabotage or foul play was discovered. The crash appeared to be a tragic accident caused by road conditions and vehicle limitations rather than any deliberate action by political enemies or foreign agents. Prince Makonnen's 5 sons survived their father's death and continued to play roles within the imperial family structure. When the monarchy was overthrown in 1974, they joined other family members in exile, eventually settling in various countries around the world. The prince's descendants have maintained connections to Ethiopian culture and royal traditions, while building new lives in diaspora communities. Some have pursued professional careers in business, education, or other fields, while others have remained more actively involved in Ethiopian cultural and political organizations. Through his sons and their descendants, Prince Makonnen's bloodline continues to form part of the broader network of Ethiopian imperial family members scattered throughout the international community. Their presence helps preserve memories of the imperial era while adapting to contemporary realities. Born on February 27, 1931, Prince Sahle Selassie, Haile Selassie, was the youngest child of Emperor Haile Selassie and Empress Menen Asfaw. His birth occurred just 1 year after his father's coronation as Emperor of Ethiopia, making him the only imperial child born after the formal establishment of Haile Selassie's reign. This timing gave him a unique position within the family as the coronation baby who represented the hope and promise of the new imperial era. Prince Sahle Selassie's birth in Menelik Palace, the historic center of Ethiopian imperial power, symbolized continuity with the country's monarchical traditions while representing the modernizing aspirations of his father's reign. Named after one of Ethiopia's most revered historical figures, the prince carried expectations from birth that he would contribute significantly to the imperial legacy. His early childhood was spent during the peaceful years of the early 1930s, when Emperor Haile Selassie was implementing ambitious modernization programs and Ethiopia was gaining increasing recognition on the international stage. This period of stability and optimism provided an ideal environment for the young prince's development and education. As the youngest child, Prince Sahle Selassie received particularly close attention from both parents. His education began early with private tutors who provided instruction in multiple languages, history, and the cultural traditions that would prepare him for royal responsibilities while ensuring he understood Ethiopia's place in the modern world. Prince Sahle Selassie's education was interrupted by the Italian invasion of 1935, when he accompanied his family into exile in Britain at the age of 4. The 5 years spent in London during his formative childhood years provided him with extensive exposure to European culture and educational methods that would influence his later interests and perspectives. During the exile period, the young prince attended British schools where he excelled academically and developed interests that extended beyond traditional royal pursuits. His education emphasized both intellectual development and practical skills, preparing him for potential roles in a modernized Ethiopian government upon the family's eventual return. When the imperial family returned to Ethiopia in 1941, 10-year-old Prince Haile Selassie had to readjust to Ethiopian court life while maintaining the broader cultural perspectives he had gained during exile. This dual cultural foundation would characterize much of his later life and work. Throughout his teenage years and early adulthood, Prince Haile Selassie demonstrated particular interest in arts, literature, and cultural preservation. He understood the importance of maintaining Ethiopian traditions while adapting to modern realities, a balance that reflected his father's broader political and social philosophy. The prince's education continued at advanced levels, including university studies that provided him with intellectual frameworks for understanding Ethiopia's challenges and opportunities. His academic achievements distinguished him within the imperial family as someone who could contribute to policy development and cultural initiatives. In 1957, Prince Haile Selassie married Mahicente Habte Mariam, a member of the Ethiopian nobility who shared his intellectual interests and commitment to social progress. Their marriage represented a union of two distinguished families and was celebrated as a symbol of hope for the future of Ethiopian aristocracy. Mahicente Habte Mariam brought her own accomplishments and social connections to the marriage, making her an active partner in the prince's public duties and cultural activities. The couple worked together on various initiatives related to education, arts, and social welfare, particularly those focused on preserving Ethiopian cultural heritage while promoting modernization. Their marriage was characterized by mutual respect and shared interests in intellectual and cultural pursuits. Both were well educated and committed to using their privileged positions to benefit Ethiopian society rather than merely enjoying aristocratic status. The couple's relationship reflected changing attitudes within Ethiopian high society regarding marriage and gender roles. They presented a model of partnership that balanced traditional royal protocol with more modern approaches to family life and public service. The marriage of Prince Haile Selassie and Princess Mahicente produced one son, Prince Ermias Sahle Selassie, born in 1960. As the grandson of Emperor Haile Selassie and the only son of the youngest imperial prince, Ermias represented both continuity and renewal within the imperial bloodline. Prince Ermias's birth was particularly significant because it occurred during a period of increasing political tension in Ethiopia, including the 1960 coup attempt that had implicated Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen. The birth of a new generation of imperial heirs provided hope for the dynasty's future stability and continuity. From birth, Prince Ermias was groomed for potential leadership roles within Ethiopian society. His education emphasized both traditional Ethiopian values and modern international perspectives, preparing him for whatever future challenges might face the imperial family and the country. The young prince's upbringing took place during the final years of the imperial era as political pressures mounted against Emperor Haile Selassie's government. This context would prove crucial to his later life when the monarchy was overthrown and the family was forced into exile. Prince Haile Selassie died unexpectedly in 1962 at the age of 31, making him another victim of the tragedies that seemed to follow the imperial family throughout the mid-20th century. His death occurred during what should have been the prime years of his life and career, cutting short his potential contributions to Ethiopian development and cultural preservation. The prince's death was mourned throughout Ethiopia as the loss of a promising young leader who had represented hope for the imperial family's future. His combination of traditional royal dignity with modern intellectual interest had made him popular among both conservative and progressive elements of Ethiopian society. Emperor Haile Selassie was devastated by the loss of his youngest son, coming as it did relatively soon after the death of Prince Makonnen in 1957. The emperor had invested considerable hope in his younger sons as alternatives to the politically problematic Crown Prince Asfaw Wossen. Prince Haile Selassie was buried at Holy Trinity Cathedral in Addis Ababa, which had become the traditional resting place for members of the imperial family. His funeral was attended by thousands of mourners who recognized his potential and grieved for what might have been. Though Prince Haile Selassie's life was cut short, his legacy continued through his son, Prince Ermias, who survived the 1974 revolution and eventually became one of the most prominent members of the imperial family in exile. Prince Ermias has maintained royal traditions while building a successful international career. Today, Prince Ermias Haile Selassie serves as the unofficial head of the Ethiopian imperial family and continues to advocate for Ethiopian cultural preservation and development. Through him, the bloodline of Haile Selassie's youngest son continues to play a role in Ethiopian diaspora communities worldwide. 7 children, 7 fates, 7 threads in the tapestry of Ethiopian imperial history. From Princess Romanework's death in an Italian prison to Prince Haile Selassie's unexpected passing in the prime of life, each of Haile Selassie's children experienced both the privileges and perils of royal birth in a century of unprecedented change. Princess Tenagnework survived them all, living to 2003 as the last direct link to the imperial court's golden age. Her longevity became a form of testimony, carrying memories of palace life, exile, revolution, and survival across 9 decades of Ethiopian history. Through her endurance, she embodied the imperial family's capacity to adapt and persist through any circumstance. Crown Prince Haile Selassie carried the heaviest burden, the weight of succession and the pain of exile. His proclamation as emperor from Virginia represented both determination and futility, the persistence of dynastic claims in a world that had moved beyond monarchy. His reburial in Addis Ababa offered a form of reconciliation between past and present. The tragic early deaths, Romanework in captivity, Zenebework at 17, Tsehai in childbirth, Makonnen in a car crash, Haile Selassie at 31, speak to the fragility that existed behind imperial grandeur. Royal birth provided no immunity from war, disease, accident, or the simple unpredictability of life. Yet the bloodline endures. Through Prince Ermias Haile Selassie and dozens of other descendants scattered across the globe, the genetic and cultural legacy of Haile Selassie continues in Ethiopian diaspora communities from London to Los Angeles. They carry forward not political claims, but cultural memory, maintaining traditions while building new lives in new countries. The children of Haile Selassie remind us that behind every crown stands a family, with all the love, loss, hope, and heartbreak that families experience. Their stories transcend the rise and fall of political systems, speaking to universal themes of duty, sacrifice, survival, and continuity. For every crown that falls, memory remains. The children of Haile Selassie lived through empire's end, but their lives ensure that the human story behind the historical legend will not be forgotten. In exile and in memory, the imperial family endures, not as rulers, but as keepers of a remarkable chapter in human history.